Morning.
Good
Good morning,
morning.
everyone. Good morning, Kimberly. I
Hi.
am. It's so nice to see you because I know
It's
on
good to
a lot
see
of
you
our
too.
calls we opt out of Zoom because we're a little zoomed out. So it is so nice to see each other, and you look
Right.
great.
Thank you. As do you,
Yeah,
always.
yeah.
Always.
Thank you. This is We Lead Live, and I'm so delighted to have Kimberly with us today because it's a topic we haven't really dove into yet on this series. And this series, if you haven't been keeping up, I'm interviewing just some amazing, high-performing women. Some I've worked with, some I have had just the blessing to become acquainted with, and I can't wait to introduce you to Kimberly today, who is a private client, and she's going to be talking about the communication skills now. The reason this is so important right now, which we're going to get into, is this is going to become even more demand and more necessitated, in the future. But
Mhm.
it's critical right now for those of you who are in a leadership position with your own teams or in organizations to listen to some of the things she's going to be sharing today. And we're going to get to some really great practical strategies as well. So Kimberly, I'll just toot your horn for a minute, and then you can. It sounded personal, actually. Sorry. let me let me toot your horn for a minute. But I mean,
Feel free.
Kimberly is very modest, but she has worked for and consulted with some top companies that Starbucks, Verizon, and she goes into the company she works with today and helps the leaders, typically at the C-suite level, really look at what they can be doing better or differently. And this year's brought some challenges, some new challenges for
For
them
sure. For
in
sure.
that. I'd love to
Yeah.
just start a bit with your background, though. If you could walk everyone through how you created your company today.
Sure. Very briefly, I think it bears saying I had an entrepreneurial experience early in life that was pretty successful. I was attending grad school in San Diego. I had an opportunity to work for a home care agency, and within a couple of years, I actually owned a home care agency and really had a good entrepreneurial success with that. It was a very successful company. At the same time, though, I had dreams for running Fortune 500 advertising and PR campaigns. And so when I was finished with grad school, I was recruited and I went to work for a company out in Riverside called Fleetwood Enterprises. And from there, I had a great opportunity to become a brand strategist, launch a national advertising campaign in a really interesting industry, and through that was recruited to Starbucks. And then I spent several years at Starbucks, and some really fun years at that company, and again got to do a number of just really exciting projects. And
Was that during the
um,
booming time? Was that
that
like
was
the big
during
boom for?
that was during the booming time. It was the late
Wow.
90s. So, the company, has had its growth spurt, but that was probably one of the bigger growth spurt eras of the company. And it was just a phenomenal company. I'm still, a raving fan today. So, really great company. And I learned a lot about leadership there. And I in both of those companies, I spent 10 years in corporate marketing and as an executive, and I got to work alongside, a lot of the most senior people in the company in both of those companies. And I learned about good leadership and bad leadership. And as a marketer, always looking at how to make things, how to connect with your audience, how to move the needle, how to get people to really take the behavior you want them to take. What became a fascination for me was how to apply what we did in marketing to a personal level. And this really is the foundation of why I started my business and the work that I do today. And actually, in a lot of my coaching and training, I bring in a lot of marketing principles and teach them to leaders so that they can personalize them for themselves. Because what I
Mm.
recognized through observation and through experience was that those leaders that could communicate in a way that met the needs of their audience, their one-to-one audience, or a boardroom or a big grand ballroom filled with people. When the leaders took the time to really understand who they were, what their value was, and were able to think about what their audience, their consumer needed, they were able to communicate in truly brilliant ways. And so that uh, with the marketing background, with a depth of knowledge and leadership, is really what I wanted to build a company around. And so
Mm.
in 2002, I had taken a COO role at a dot-com company during the dot-com, dot-bomb era. And that wasn't a horrible experience for me, but it did open a lot of doors because I had a lot of clients or a lot of former colleagues call and say, hey, Kimberly, you're going to be out of a job soon. So, do you want to take on a project? And I wasn't sure if I would or wouldn't. So I took on some projects. And
you mean they saw what was coming when everything
they
started
saw
to
well,
blow up?
everyone saw what was coming. It was happening. So, and we were partnered. The company that I was running at the time was partnered with WorldCom, and so we were, tangentially, and didn't really have much to do with that, but we were on the periphery of that. So I responded favorably to a lot of those requests and offers. And within just a couple of months, I realized that I had the foundation of the company that I had wanted for years. And so I launched Accelerate in 2002. And so now we're, what's that, 19 years. And it has been a wonderful ride. I really have enjoyed it, have met, coached, and helped a lot of people, a lot of leaders, a lot of employees to, understand who they are, what their value is, and how they can make their work and their career really fulfilling and high impact. And that's important to me. The results always matter.
I just wrote down something you said because I hadn't really connected it before, but I always loved marketing, and that was my background. And I never thought about how that can directly connect to how you communicate and lead. I actually don't think I really thought of that before, how direct it is.
Yep. It really is. It's the exact same thing. I mean, psychology. And so the mechanics are almost the exact same. It's just, instead of the medium's different, right? We're always the medium. And so but it's still, even today, almost every client that I work with, we work on their personal PR campaign for whatever it is they want to achieve. And it's transforming for people to really think about their communications in that way, because what it allows us to do, and this is powerful, it allows us to make the communications not about us. So we can kind of say, all right, it doesn't matter what I want in this situation, what's going to be the most productive thing. So a lot of people talk about optimal thinking or positive thinking, but I like to talk about productive thinking, because I think that as someone who's pragmatic, we can't always be optimistic, but we can always make a productive decision. And I think that actually feels better. I think it feels, something with more integrity, because we don't have to just put a smile on, right? We don't always have to have the success glow on. We can be real people and we can think productively. And I think that when you are a marketer, you're not thinking emotionally. I mean, you're thinking about capturing people's emotions, and we want to do that, but we're not thinking, about what we want. We're thinking about what the audience wants. What is going to move the audience? And so if you can personalize that as an idea, you will naturally start to communicate differently, and it will remain authentic. It's just that your mind has shifted. Who is important in the discussion? Is it you or is it your audience? And I think when we apply some of those thoughts to our leadership, we immediately transform how we want to engage with others, because we know we want to create an experience for them. And we don't have to think, oh, well, what's my piece? What do I get out of that? If we're not focused on that, which unfortunately in our natural state, we're often focused on that. But if we're not focused on that, then what's possible is that we become people who are meeting the needs of others very naturally. Taking the focus off us and we put it on them. And that awareness and that practice and all the techniques that I use to help people do that, all of that really came from my marketing background and understanding what it was like, what it meant to build a brand, and what it meant to create loyal followers.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to start talking about that. I'll credit you for pointing that out. But
thank you.
I really hadn't thought of that, because that's what I learned so much in direct marketing was, it's not about the product or the service necessarily, or what you want, right? How do you flip it? The old "what's in it for me," WIIFM, learning that from the old marketing guys, and thinking, so every time I do communicate, It's interesting, but I didn't apply that to even, like more, type of team leadership, company leadership. So
Yeah,
that's interesting. There was something that you and I chat about at one point. I'd love you to elaborate on, because I think this affects everyone watching this right now
sure.
who is dealing with a team, dealing with it as managing a team, or maybe they don't think of them as managing, but
Yeah.
working with a team from
Mhm.
home, especially
Mhm.
people who were previously maybe local. I know for me
Yeah.
this was a big shift, because when I started to hire people again full time for my business, I said, you know what, I did virtual for years. It worked to a point, but now I really want people in the room. I want to be able to say, hey, let's have a meeting in an
Yeah.
hour, and
Yeah.
bring your
Mhm.
coffees and let's sit down, get the whiteboard out. Like I love nothing more than that.
Yeah.
Then last year happened, and we all started working from home separate a lot more. And
Mhm.
we're still not quite back where we were, because like some of it does work. I like privacy some days and things, but
Yeah.
I feel more isolated now
Mhm.
working without the team here. And I
Yeah.
know that they do too. We kind of fall into that trap of working in a bubble. So tell me how this is, how your observations on this over the past year, and the leaders you've worked with, and your
Sure.
best strategies for that.
Sure. So I call this out of sight, out of mind. The issues that come up with that. We're working remotely, and there's a lot of different things going on. Overworking, silo working. These are all natural outcomes of kind of the state that we're in. And so, what happens for leaders in particular is that they are the all of the natural, you know, stop by the office, walking in
Mm,
and out of the building, pulling someone into a meeting. There's a whole host of, of interactions that people aren't thinking about. They're not planning for, but they're actually what makes good decision making happen. And there's a feeling of inclusivity from a lot of that. And that's one of the things that I think leaders are dealing with today, and they're in our virtual environment trying to figure out what's the right balance of communication. If I'm going to have a Zoom, I want people to feel included. If I'm going to have a Zoom, do I invite a broad team where I know that half the people are just going to be listening, not adding value, and therefore probably doing other things online? Or, am I going to not have those people come in? Because it's not really high value. It's not the same as pulling someone into a physical meeting like you might have done in the past. I have a client who, the company has a couple different locations, and one of the two of the leaders were in the same place, then weren't in the same place, and are now back in the same place. And in talking with one of my clients, I mean, the relief at being together in the same place, and just the amount of work that they've been able to get done, more work in 30 days than they could in the whole past 90 days, right? So I think that as we are in this virtual hybrid situation, I know a lot of companies are going back to work for the reasons that you're talking about, Allie. A lot of it is, and yet it's going to stay. We're still going to have a remote workforce, and we're going to have more remote working. Those are just facts out of this situation. But it's finding the balance of how do you connect with people, have them feel included, not add to the plate, and not waste people's time on Zoom. Or,
yeah.
so it's a conundrum for a lot of people. And so what are some of the strategies that I help people, put into place with their teams? One of them would be creating environments, creating a meeting cadence that's dependable and that works for that particular team. There's whether it's weekly meetings, daily meetings, bi-weekly meetings, and then also having meetings for different purposes. So having a war room, for example, or office hours, you can call it different things, but where a leader's available, but it's not a meeting, there's not an agenda. And maybe someone shows up and maybe someone doesn't.
Mm,
Maybe everyone shows up, but it's that kind of, it's what it's meant for is that informal time. And so
okay.
what we need to think about are new routines and new techniques, new routines that replace the productive ones that we no longer have access to. And with any new routine, sometimes it feels like that's not going to work, or that's too simple to really work, or the first 3 times I did it, it didn't work. So what I would say for folks is you know, to look at your team, to talk to your team, to try some new things and try them more than once, because any new communication habit feels a little clunky at first. It feels maybe artificial, or it feels corny. I know a lot of the initial, you know, happy hours, and you know, the kind of trying to replicate an informal meeting, like a meetup, that took a lot of time for people to get comfortable with kind of what was the right way to do that. I know,
Yeah.
you know, I tried, you know, lunch and learns with my team, and I did certain coffee things, and you know, in the beginning tried to put out some questions to have people come on board, but in the end, you know, we ended up just letting it be a little bit more informal. But what was really important was having a designated time that wasn't a status meeting, a planning meeting, a client review, you know, that it wasn't just, you know, specific business.
Yeah.
It's
I know I
really
miss those. I miss those moments. We'll be like, I'll just have an idea, and I would walk in there and be like, hey, you guys free? I just had this brainstorm, and
yeah,
let's work through this. And I like your ideas on this. And now I'm like, we got to schedule it, and you know, have a Zoom or wait for the other meeting. And so I like this, but yeah, that will not continue to not irritate me, like all the scheduling. But I
well,
like this, you know, creating though the structure to catch the magic that used to happen naturally. We have to create some structure for that. That's what you're saying.
exactly. And so you bring up something, and I want to point it out because it's also a problem, and that is, in this environment, everyone seems to be scheduled all day long, every day.
Every day.
Every day. I have clients that are like, oh, I just, you know, I need to meet with you. How about 3 weeks
Right.
from Thursday? And I'm
Right.
like,
Even if it's like a 5 minute thing, you
Thursday.
got to book it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you do. And so one of the things that is now coming up in conversation a lot more is, how do we get out of all this meetings? Like, how do we stop the meetings? And so a lot of it is looking at who really needs to be on the meeting. If you're not going to speak, do you really need to be there? Tape the meeting. If someone just needs it, tape it, have it later, so that we're not clogging up people's calendars. I had a client that we actually spent probably 3 months working through, and this involved more than the client himself, but he was triple booked. And it was causing problems because people thought that he was being disrespectful by declining meetings. But you know, I would look at his calendar with him, and he would be double and triple booked every day of the week, probably at least 3 times a day. I mean, you think about that. But here's a person who is in meetings back to back to back. When are they working? Who is working? If you are in meetings from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night, no, when are you working? So that's creating a real crisis of overwork. So then people are having to work at, you know, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning up until, you know, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And this is a real present situation. And it's really up to leaders to take a look at that, what's going on in their organization, take time to understand what their people, what the routine of that workflow is, and be creative. Undo that. Make sure that people are not scheduled and not having to work early mornings and late at night just to get the work done, because their schedules are so impacted with meetings.
Yeah.
I'm actually spending time next week with a client to, you know, their whole leadership team to unpack this issue a little bit, so that they can get unnecessary people off the Zoom meetings and figure out creative ways to still keep people informed and feel included, but really to right size this meeting problem, because it's turning into stress, you know, where people can't manage their, you know, their lives. You would think that all this working from home would reduce that, but it hasn't. It has exacerbated it tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah. Like every day is like the Groundhog Day movie. It's just
Yeah.
over and over. Like you look at your
Yeah.
schedule and you're like, and it's
Yeah.
interesting when you read, you know, the leadership books, like the Bob Iger one, the Disney one, the Reed Hastings and Netflix, like all these ones, they always comment on this issue. Always, 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 and how they needed to pull, it comes up in one way or another for them
Yeah.
personally or their teams, that there was a point they had to say, you know what, I can't be a part of all these meetings because I'm not able to lead the company, and put that strategic time in, which leads to another issue too, right? When you are the leader or the visionary, or you're leading a team or a department, and I think this goes for anybody, even if you don't consider yourself in a managerial role, creating structured time, like making that a part of the calendar to have that time. I know for you and I've had some chats on our calls how I need to do it for myself again. It's been too long. Like that, I literally will go lock up, and when you have a husband my husband's a saint, he knows, because I start to get, I'm like, I need to go check in somewhere. Just right away. It's been a long year. Yeah. Like if you want a happy mommy, you need a rested mommy. And the first day I'll just sleep usually. And then I get all these ideas and start mapping things out. It's so hard to do that now, especially now that we're kind of trapped at the house more. We have families, we're running companies.
Yeah.
What's your advice to your clients, entrepreneurial or corporate, who need that structured time to be creative and strategic and think bigger?
Yeah, we are simpatico on this. I know we've talked about it before. I am a huge believer that leaders need to take the time to lead. And whether that's thinking through thinking through things, planning out and acting on development, or just rejuvenating. All of those activities take time out of the doing. And for some leaders in particular, it is very hard to say, I'm going to take a half a day, much less, a retreat, right? A 2 or 3 day retreat. I'm going to take a half a day and I'm just going to think about what I need to think about. And I'm going to let that come to me. It is a discipline that takes an effort for most leaders to build. So I recommend a couple of things. I do recommend an annual retreat, whether it's a day, although I think 3 days is ideal. And you can do it by yourself, or you can do it as a group. There's a lot of organizations that do executive level retreats, or you can set one for yourself and just do an independent one. But I do recommend that once a year. And then I also recommend a weekly reserve of time that is dedicated to just thinking. And so you might have 2 or 3 bullets of what you are going to use that time to think about, but that's it. And it's sacred time, no phones, no texts, no email, no electronics. It is, I recommend that folks set up a ritual around it. So kind of use the habit loop to make it something to look forward to, whether it's, getting your Starbucks coffee, or, lighting a candle, putting on music. I know for me, I put on music, a certain kind of music that just kind of runs really low in the background. I get my cup of coffee and I shut down all my electronics. And I just take that reserve of time and I use it to think about what I need to think about. So that would be on a weekly basis. And then on a daily basis, a journaling. Not journaling in the sense of writing out all your thoughts and hopes and dreams, although I absolutely
like dear diary.
Great, right. Dear diary. That is wonderful. Absolutely, I'm a believer in that.
I haven't done that in years. I haven't had. Yeah, I remember I used to journal before kids. I used to journal and with the candle, and now I got kids jumping in bed with me in morning, night.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Tell me what you do. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I recommend and often provide my clients with a format for is keep it simple. If it's going to take just a few minutes and if it provides huge value, I know people will do it. If it's cumbersome, they won't. So it's 2 to 3 minutes in the morning and maybe 2 to 3 to 5 minutes in the evening. And in the morning, it's simply, what are my intentions for the day? No more than 3 things that I have to do. So it's, what am I going to do? And then how am I going to be? And it's set up in a format. So I know I need to do these 3 things today. And you might have a list. You may say, well, I already have that written down, and that's okay. We know our lists are like yay long and we won't get through all of them. So sometimes we have to look at the list and say, of all the things that have to happen today? What are the 3 that must happen today that I really want to make happen? And what this allows is us to prioritize on a daily basis. So as leaders, most leaders have a big plan. They've got a medium plan. They know where they're going. But when it comes to the rubber meeting the road on a day-to-day basis, there can be a ton of wasted time because there's not the minute focus. So it's 3 things to do, and how do you need to be? What mood do you need to be in? What kind of mindset do you need to have for that day? And if you remind yourself like, hey, I've got this kind of day, maybe it's a day where you've got to do administrative work. Well, you don't want to be creative on an administrative day. No, you want to be focused. You want to get calm. You want to be undistracted. And so by thinking through how we need to be, we're going to think through, all right, well, maybe I'm going to need to shut off my email so I'm not distracted. Maybe I'm going to need to close the door. Maybe I'm going to need to do those things that get me in that mood.
Yeah. It's an environmental. What's your environment, right? I know I can't be too creative or strategic at my desk. For me, I have to get away from the desk.
Always get away from the desk. Yeah. And it's different for everybody. It's once you know how you need to be that day, pretty much we're going to know what we need to do to get ourselves there. If not, then that's what your coach is for, to help you with those. At the end of the day, so that's it for the beginning, 2 to 3 minutes, because it's not information that's not already there. It's just we're focusing and we're prioritizing and we're deciding. So it happens very quickly. At the end of the day, a reflection. So again, not very long. It's reflecting on these 3 things. What were my successes today? What do I feel gratitude about? And what is the evidence of success that my bigger picture developmental things are happening? What are the things that came out of the day that tell me that I'm on the right track? Now, naturally, the things that came up that you're off the track, you're going to reflect on those. Those tend to come up more naturally. But we want to be collecting evidence of success, and we want to end our day in gratitude. And the reason for that is it's powerful. It's powerful to help us transition out of whatever we're in that day. If we were in a frustrated place, we can transfer into a better place as we kind of leave our work knowing that whatever happened that day, it's all in a day's work. The jobs that we're in are, they have good stuff and they have bad stuff. And something that I learned and I talk a lot about with folks who are wishing away people problems, or, wishing sales would come easier, a lot of different, like, I wish it was easier to run an organization. Well, that is the job that you signed up for. It's all in a day's work. And when you kind of switch your mindset, like that's all in a day's work, that some of that's going to be there tomorrow, but it's not do or die. And that all in a day's work is something that the Reader's Digest was something that I read all the time as a young kid, because it was one of the only things in my house, and I used to always read it. But
we always did that in the bathroom. Yeah, my parents always left that in the basket. When I was a kid, I read Reader's Digest too. That was the big thing back then. Yeah,
and there were all these stories in there, right, about like things that happen at work, and that's just something that stuck with me. That some of the stuff that happens that we feel bad about, it's not to feel bad about. It's just all in a day's work. It's what we signed up for as leaders. And so if we can have some gratitude around that, close our day out in a positive way, we will have a better night's sleep, we'll be better for our families, and we'll start the next day with, a better energy to just say, okay, now today's a new day. What do I got to do and how do I got to be?
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Very short routine that's very powerful.
Yeah, I love that. And Kimberly, I'm just going to pop in quickly, but I'm going to ask you one more question, but I just want to let everyone know that what we're doing in this series is featuring some of the best high-performing women leaders I know. If you would like to be around more women like the ones I've been interviewing, I have a special invitation. You can come take a look. It's jointhetrust.org. This is the premier network for 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. And we have a special retreat coming up in Miami, and I'm going to see you there as well, Kimberly, in Miami.
Absolutely.
And so we need these environmental shifts. And I truly believe so strongly in the art of gathering. If it's possible right now, and if it's legal, then like do it. We need to see each other, even if it's in a spread out room, wherever we are. but I'm so excited for that because I need that environment switch as well. Here it's just kind of the same thing. And I love my family, but excited for that plane ride alone. They're coming later. I'm looking forward. I've never looked forward to a flight like even with a mask on. Like I don't care. Like I just want peace.
Yes.
4 hours in the air. And then the beauty of Miami and all that. So join thetrust.org, come have a look. If it sounds like something you'd like to be a part of, we'd be happy to talk with you and tell you more. Join thetrust.org. And Kimberly, I'd just love to tell us a little bit, anything else you'd love us to know, and then a bit about your work and where people can follow you.
Sure. Well, first, let me just comment. You just talked about the trust and the event coming up in Miami, and I want to say that if anyone is thinking about it, has looked into it, not knowing whether it would be of great value, if the people there would be, kind of your people, it is a tremendous group of people that come together. And Allie has the ability to really just attract and bring out the best in high performing leaders. I have been so impressed with the women that I have met working with Allie. I couldn't recommend it more. I've had experience with other groups, and this is one that I just never leave a conversation or a meeting without feeling absolutely infused with ideas and energy, but more important, actionable focus. I have taken so much great action working with Allie that it's been wonderful. So if you're thinking about it, take that next step, do it.
Thank you. Thanks. And where can everyone learn more about Executive Accelerator, your program, and the work that you do and follow you?
Yes, well, thank you. I would love for anyone to visit iaccelerate.com. It's IANEXCELERATE.com. And that's our website. You can find out lots of information, easy to connect with me that way. And within the next couple of days, we're relaunching KimberlyGerber.com, maybe a little easier to remember. But that one will be a great website too, where I'll have my personal blog and a lot of information about the philosophies that I really believe are important for leaders in particular to understand about, how to communicate and how to really create the best experience for others in order to get what ultimately they need and want.
I do have one last question. We're a little over, but that's okay with me if you have another minute.
Yeah. Fine.
When you think about the future of communication and, because here's how I see things now, and I'd love your take on things, is that there's going to be this big split. You have the AI, everything's going to get done for you, thought through for you. We don't even know how that's going to I have a colleague here in town who works for one of the big 5 consulting firms, and her job basically is to go into companies and see what can be shifted to AI. I mean, it's a real wake up call for people, right? And then on this side, human connection, conversation, communication, where do you see that?
I see that more important than ever. I think that we're going to, and what I mean by more important than ever is I think it's going to be more important than ever to be intentional about our communications for a couple of reasons. One, it is the point of differentiation that we have. How we communicate with people as we are more of a personality-based environment, a personality-based society, as we are more connecting like this versus in person, connecting electronically, how we communicate, how we connect with one another is going to be even more important. And I think what that requires people to understand is what their preferences are, because we can help ourselves by understanding, introversion, extroversion. Extroverts have had it a little harder than introverts in this last year, as we've been all, stuck inside, especially if if we don't have families and other people that we're socializing with on an ongoing basis. So that's going to be something that I think we're going to see some shifts based on just our environment. In terms of AI, and the human connection is not going to go anywhere. AI might replace how our reports get done and some of, how statistics get done and how a lot of work gets done, but it isn't going to replace ultimately how we are functioning. I don't think in our lifetime, I don't think it's going to replace the need for connection, the need for decision making, at a human level. And so I think that while the environments are going to change, and how we are regarding each other is going to shift, where it's, people are going to be more focused on the individual, I believe, who the individual is and what that person stands for. We could unpack a whole other suitcase on this.
Yeah.
I do think that understanding who you are, particularly for leaders, who you are as a leader, what you stand for, what your brand is. We all have a brand, whether we work on it, whether we want to or not, we all have a personal brand. And so as a leader, really understanding what yours is, what's the environment that you're creating for other people, and how are you creating your results through your communication. I think those are things that are going to be a big focus. And I think that if we look at social media, if we look at how people are promoted, if we look at a lot of what's happening today, then everything I said makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody. And remember,
right,
check out jointhetrust.org if you'd like more information on joining us in Miami and our program. And then Kimberly, give your website one more time.
Accelerate. Accelerate.com. Yep.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Allie. Bye.
Bye.